Okay, so basically our goal for today is to export these walls in a 2D format and the roof plane, and we might get to this wall, but I doubt it. Our curtain wall system. We're gonna export them first, and then we'll open up Autocad and import them all at once.
How do you, like, from an axonometric, how do you, like, get this stuff back onto the building altogether?
So you like did that in your 3D view?
Yeah.
So right click it, the view in the project browser, and duplicate view without detailing, and rename that your new 3D view. That work for you? Okay. Hopefully that works for you. So let's go ahead and start with our east elevation and just work our way around. So we're going to open up the east elevation, and I'm going to select this wall, and I'm going to utilize my isolate element tool down at the bottom here, so that I'm only looking at this. And if you have some extra line work in here that is sticking out like mine is, don't worry about it. We'll trim that up in Autocad when we get it inserted. So once we have it isolated, we can go ahead and go to the Export tab here under the R Start menu, and we want to export it as a CAD format, DWG. Shouldn't matter what scale you're at in your viewport. And you pretty much want to leave everything alone and click Next. And I'm going to go ahead and save this under my in-class assignment 5. I'm going to create a new folder so I don't get jumbled up with everything else that's in the file. Should be a create new folder tab up here somewhere in this area. And I'm just going to rename that exported elements. Open that up, and we can get rid of most of this. We got it working, but the thing still doesn't. I tried to call you.
He said that thing like isn't working for some reason, so like force logged it in.
Oh. They really need to get on top of their game. So you can, if you are using a later version than AutoCAD 20, or an earlier version rather, you can back save this file. We're just going to go ahead and leave it at the AutoCAD 2013. It should open up just fine in our 15 version. And I'm going to click OK. And you'll get this screen that says the temporary hide isolate mode is currently on in the following view. Do you want to leave it on, or do you want to turn it off? We want to leave the temporary hide isolate mode on for the export, because we only want to export that wall. So let's go to our north elevation. Again, cycle through till you select the exterior wall. Utilize the isolate element tool. And we're going to go ahead and under the start menu, export it as a DWG file. Click next. Again, leave the temporary hide isolate mode on. Let's go to our west elevation. Isolate the element. I'm going to export it. It's a CAD format, DWG. Click next. Leave the temporary hide isolate on. Has everybody got those three? No? Okay, let's just break and get everybody on the same page before we move on. If anybody needs help.
leave a note here with the touch panel.
Hopefully,
Other folks can log in here.
that for every single view.
We got a. There we go.
All right, thanks. Did you fix it?
No.
Huh?
No.
Well, that's gonna help.
Why don't you just
No,
use the manual
it gives the pass button
for
login.
the screen?
Okay.
Yeah, did you try that?
What?
The manual?
Of course not.
I didn't say anything when I got here. If I'm late, I shouldn't say anything.
Yay!
Design toolkit.
Manual push
Always have a
buttons.
manual override in electronics field. That's electronics. Smart technology.
Did you do the sign sheet?
No, I have not. In fact, I'm going to pause this video because I'm on here. So south elevation is a little trickier because we've got a curved wall, so we can't just quite export the 2D format. I mean, we can, but when you go to, like, if you went to cut it and set it in place, it's going to come up short on both sides because of the curve. So basically, we're still going to export it as a 2D surface, but then we're going to have to actually measure that length of what that is so that we can fix it in Autocad, which we may not get through all of today, but at least you understand that any curved surface, you'd have to do some legwork to get it to work. When we talk about Rhino in 243, I don't know if everybody in the class is taking that, Rhino has the capability of flattening curves, curved surfaces to flat planes, and I have not explored yet exporting files from Revit to Rhino, but in those certain circumstances it might benefit to do that. Maybe. I don't know. I have to explore it. I don't use Rhino much. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and select our walls, or try to here. Might be a little difficult. Might have to tab through to select them. Okay, so I have all mine selected. You can tell by these little dashed lines that are blue. They're really hard to see. And when you hover over the object, the plus sign changes. See how the column's not selected? So when I hover over it, it's just the regular arrow tool, but when I hover over something that's already selected, it gives me the plus sign, or the plus with the 4 arrows. What'd you call it?
Move. Isn't it the move tool? Move all the way around. You look next to the copy tool.
Yeah, I guess it's that symbol. It's not necessarily the move tool, but at any rate, we can now go ahead and temporarily isolate those elements. and export them as CAD format, DWG. Next, I'm going to call that south. And we're going to leave the temporarily hide isolate on. Okay, so we have our all 4 building sides exported. If we switch to our 3D view, we need to export our roof plane. And if we were to go into our site plan and isolate it, it wouldn't be its true dimension because it's on a slope. So we actually need to do this in the 3D viewport by selecting it, and then we can right click on the navigation square and orient to plane. And we're now going to pick and click OK our roof. And so that basically snapped to the roof plane at that slope. Sure doesn't look like it, but it did. There's a little shadow up here, so we just have to tab through to select the roof itself, and we can go ahead and isolate the element. Sure doesn't seem like it snapped to the right plane, but it did. And we're going to go ahead and export this. Same format, DWG. And we're going to just name this roof plane. Roof plan. That works too. Leave the isolated hide isolate mode on. And the last but not least, we want to export probably our ground. So I'm back in the site plan and I selected our building pad, and I'm going to isolate that element as well. And so you could get more detailed isolating the ramps, the lower courtyard with it, and bring that with it if you want. We're just going to do this for now though. It's really all we need to do. But if you were, really pursuing getting the whole model, you can start to, instead of doing individual parts and pieces because we have this lower courtyard, you could isolate that as well with the other building pad and export them at the same time. You don't have to do one piece at a time. It just simplifies things for now. Other kind of tips and tricks, if you were to say we wanted to model, or not model, but do the inside as well. You could start to go to the second floor and isolate that floor plane export that out. You can start to cut sections in the building. And let's look this direction, and let's move this to about here so that we're only looking at that wall. Could flip to that whoop, using the wrong lingo there. You go to that view, and then we're able to isolate that wall, you know, and probably the wall that's sitting up back here too. You'd probably want to do those two at the same time. So at any rate, that's, you know, how you can start to get the interior walls as well. You could also do it in the 3D viewport, but you'll end up with a lot of lines that you'll have to work with. So if we reset our temporary hide and put our section box on, you know, we could start doing that same thing by saying orient to plane and pick, you know, say that plane. It's kind of the same thing as cutting a section through the building to then isolate, you know, that wall and this wall to export. You'd probably want to bring the door with you so that you could etch that door into that wall. But we're not going to get to that level of detail. Just want to point it out that you can do this with every single wall in order to export it out to laser cutting. And then when you know, just to kind of further emphasize that, you know, you want to think about the thickness of your materials when you go to laser cut. So, for instance, it wouldn't be appropriate to cut this exterior wall out of chipboard. And in fact, when we exported them, it shortens the wall a little bit up because it's connected to the east and west wall. So you want to think about the thickness of the material. So you'd probably want to, at whatever scale, you know, think about if it's at an 1/8 inch scale model or a 1/16 inch model, you know, you'd want to figure out how thick that's going to be of a wall. And maybe your choice is Baltic birch, 1/8 inch Baltic birch for the exterior walls. Interior walls can become, you know, chipboard, and you start using different materials for different elements in the building. And then that also starts to, you know, not make the model look kind of mundane and simple, and, you know, it just adds complexity to it and more detail, and changing colors for different objects and things just makes a model stand out a little bit more. So take that into consideration when you start using the laser cutter for models that you're producing for studio for like a final model. Alright, so we have all of our exterior walls, we have our roof plane, and we have our floor plane. That's good enough for me. Let's go ahead and close out of Revit. I'm not going to save this, and I think I need to keep ownership of it. Click OK. Open up Autocad. Excuse me. So we're not going to initially open up our template file. We're going to work in just a new program. We're just going to create a new AutoCAD file, and we're going to utilize the ACAD file first, because hopefully when you open up AutoCAD, you'll have your layer properties here, your X reference, and your properties dialog box, and your model layout tabs down here. It should have saved kind of what you had open the last time before you closed it. If you don't have those up, you can click this layout tab in the quick access toolbar to get your layouts up down here, and you can type in layer properties, or layer, I believe. Yeah, layer opens up this one. Start typing in xref. It's this external reference, and if you type in properties, that guy will pop up. So basically what we want to do is import all of those files that we just created into this file, and when we do that, it's going to add a ton of layers in here, because it recognizes the categories from Revit and makes each category a layer. And so what we don't want to do is open up our template file and import our stuff directly into the template file, because we'll end up with a bunch of layers in our layer properties that have nothing to do with laser cutting, and it'll only slow the process down. The machine will have to think about your file a little bit harder than you want it to. So we're going to go ahead and type in insert into the command line. And it should bring up an insert tab here. We're going to specify the placement on screen, our scale. We want it uniform, and we want it to be scaled by 1. We don't want to set a different scale. This is 1:1. And we don't want to specify any angles of rotation at all. So we kind of want to leave this alone. If you did want to change your scale prior to loading in the object, you could always change this number, but I wouldn't recommend it, because it's just as easy to scale something if you want to, either using your scale viewport settings or manually using the scale tool. So we're going to click browse, and I'm going to go to my exported elements, and we're just going to start with the east elevation. Click open and click OK. We're going to place it, and I'm going to type in Z, enter, all, A, enter, and it should zoom out to the entire thing is in there. And you can also double click the middle mouse button, and that'll zoom to extends as well, which is just basically whatever elements you have in here. And notice it came in as one line, so when I select it, they're all the same, right? It's a block that you really can't manipulate, but you can. So I think I'm going to type in M for move and just move it a little bit off to the side here for now. And let's go ahead and import the other ones and just kind of line them up in a row. Type in import again. Whoop. What the heck is going on here? Insert, sorry. Insert, not import, insert. Let's just kind of follow east, north, west, and then south, and then we'll put in basically just the same way that we exported them out. Insert, browse, west elevation, south elevation, we'll just maybe put that directly under. Insert, whoops, hit the browse button first, go roof plan, maybe I'll put that and I'm going to move it to the top. And insert one more time, and we'll get the floor. Okay, so halfway there, maybe like a third of the way there. So now we have to explode these so that we can start to change their layer. So I'm going to type in explode, and I'm going to select all my objects and hit enter. And what that should do is now I can select individual lines. The next step I'm going to do is, if we look at this, since we exported this in 3D, we might have some line work behind it because it actually exported the whole 3D object, more than likely. So let's just double check I typed in E for erase. And you can see I erased it and there's another line still there, and in fact it didn't explode, right? So you'll want to be careful in that respect, that sometimes you'll have to clean up some line work. And so let's just erase okay. Alright, actually there were like 3 lines in there, so you want to be careful about that. We can go ahead and type in L and enter and redraft those 2 lines, and then fill it. Why won't that let me fill it? Okay, let's see if it'll let me trim it. And then just to be sure, we can type in overkill and hit enter, and we're going to click and drag over all of it and press enter. We don't have to select any more of these, do we? We just leave these unselected, right? For overkill.
Yes, if you check any of them, it will ignore it. So you want to.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't want to check any of these. I'm going to click OK. And that should clean up our line work below. If there is any other line work below, that should clean it up and delete it, basically. And you notice that hopefully my computer doesn't freeze here, but our brick wall came in as a hatch pattern. You know, it's a block basically, and we want to explode those as well. So I'm going to type in explode again, and I'm going to explode that hatch pattern so that they're individual lines as well. Sometimes if you're doing a small model, it might be too much to have the laser cutter cut these little lines, and so every once in a while you want to think about your scale, maybe do one test run to see if it's too much on your surface. But we're going to go ahead and leave it on there for now. We're going to select everything, and we're going to change its properties, its layer to 0, and our line type to by layer, and our line weights set by layer as well. And you'll notice that these window mullions didn't change color. That's an indication that they need to be exploded. So let's type explode in again, and hopefully that will work. Yeah, so like all these are, it's kind of a pain in the butt a little bit, but if you get just what you want selected here, see, I still have one more row here to grab. Enter.
None of the horizontals are selected.
They weren't? Yeah, they were. Let's see if there's overlapping lines. Nope. They were selected. They're all individual. So let's go ahead and change their properties to 0. And they all changed. So that's a good sign. Stuff like this you'll have to clean up a little bit. So utilizing the trim and extend tool, you can clean this up so that this this line comes all the way over. So we'll just erase those two lines, this line, and we'll trim that and trim. Actually, we can just erase that line completely, and with our quick keys, EX is extend. We can extend that line to there and that line, and now with TR is trim. Why isn't it letting me trim? It's because it's a single line. That one's not, though. Maybe it is. So I'm using the E and enter, or the space bar also does it. This one looks like there's a double line behind there. So we may want to use that overkill again, just to make sure that we have. So we want to clean up this side as well. And if you kind of get used to utilizing your left hand for commands, or if you're left-handed, utilize your right hand for commands and your left hand for the mouse, you can start to do this pretty quickly by just typing TR spacebar, EX spacebar, and you can start to flip through those two commands pretty quickly. And E for erase. So EX, we want to extend these two lines, and then TR. There's a double line there. TR, TR. Why aren't you working anymore? TR, spacebar. TR, spacebar. E to erase those lines. And let's just type in overkill one more time and double check that there aren't any extra lines back there. Okay? Oh, as I scroll in, you can see those are also blocks. We'd want to go ahead and unblock those as well. So explode. And then you'll also notice we want to type in E for erase, and you'll see that when I hover over these lines, they're actually a pattern So we probably want to eliminate those as well.
Remember when it didn't bring it in as a hash?
What's that?
So do you remember when it didn't bring it in as a hash, but individual lines?
No.
Lucky you.
Sometimes I am lucky, sometimes I'm not. So this is all kind of standard cleanup work that you have to do to the file to get it to sit right. So the other thing that we kind of want to, like our reveals here, maybe it's not really necessary to cut all those little reveals out for our model, and we just want the line work to show up. So you might have to do some additional work to clean that up a bit. So like maybe these lines go away and you just connect those lines together. Or the best kind of thing to do is to actually go ahead and create a new line. So basically you would erase that line work and create a new line in its place. What's that?
Erase all but that bottom segment and then just extend.
Yeah, you could do that too. So we could erase all these lines and then use extend and select our roof line plane and that guy, extend him all the way up. I'm not going to do it to all the walls just because I could sit here for another 15 minutes and clean this up and then we'd be out of time. I'd like to get to actually putting it into our template file and changing the lines appropriately. But before I do that, I am going to grab these blue lines and in fact, just to make that real simple, I'm going to grab all of them and again make sure that they're all on layer 0 and the line type is by layer and the line weight is by layer. And if you leave this line in here when you do like a lightweight, put this on the yellow layer to just engrave that, you'll have basically a way of placing this stuff when you cut it out. You'll have a template area to place everything on, so you aren't like guessing where that sits on that pad. So we're going to go ahead and open let's cancel that and hit the open tab here.
New.
Yeah, you're right. New. Sorry. We create a new file, and we're going to grab our laser cutting template. Click open. Go back to model space. Ooh, looks like I left some stuff in this file. So I'm going to erase this because we don't need it in there. I should probably save it really quickly. Well, doesn't matter at this point. But if you ended up with stuff when you opened up your template file, erase it and do a save as a new template file, new DWT file to get rid of everything that's in there. And we're going to go back to our DWG file that has all of our line work in it, and we can select it and Control C, then select it and hit enter to copy it to the clipboard, and Control V, paste it, switching to our template file, hit Control V and Z all, so we can see that all of it is now in our template file, and we don't have any other extra layers that come in, so because we put it on the 0 layer which already existed. So if we had this model completely cleaned up, right, we would want to basically like cut out our windows, right? So we have to do a little bit of cleanup work here. I'm just going to do it to this one right here, but before we actually apply our separate layers, I'm going to use TR and enter, and I'm going to click both of those lines, hit enter, and I'm going to trim our lines. And then I'm just going to utilize a new line and connect from there to there, and a new line from there to there. And then I can type in CO for copy and copy these two lines, hit enter, and then pick a point that I want to reference from and copy those down, so that when we go to put these objects on a particular layer, we can fairly easily. And I think I'm also just going to go ahead and cut this off here. So I'm going to type TR and just trim this off for now and erase these guys. And so now that we have one wall that's kind of ready to apply our different layered property types to, we can go ahead and start doing that. So basically we want to engrave, light engrave our reveal lines and our hatch patterns, and the easiest way to do this is to just select all of it at once and change all of our colors to our vector engraving light. And now we can go back in and select our window, and we're going to want to cut that out, so we want to change that to our interior cutting element layer, and then we can select our exterior lines, we'll have to do a little bit of work right in here, but we'll change these lines first and then we'll do that work. It's like there's a double line there to me. And we're going to put these on our exterior cut layer. So the laser cutter will know to engrave this stuff, and then it'll recognize the blue line as being the exterior or perimeter of that object that we want to cut out, and the purple is recognized as an interior cut, which is inside your perimeter cut. So any cuts that happen on the inside of your perimeter cut, you'll want to be the magenta color. And you'll notice that this is going to need a little bit of finagling, and I think the easiest solution is to just extend this line down to here, erase that line, and then trim that out and create a new line for a perimeter line. And same with this one. So trim that line out and create a new line there. And then we can go ahead and select those two lines and change them to a perimeter cut line. And seemed like a double line here, so I'm just going to quickly erase this to see if that was true. And it doesn't look like you have a dots though, huh? I don't know what those are. But see these little dots? They're kind of hard to see. I'm not sure if that actually would be a problem, but because we do see them after I deleted that line, we can just go ahead and erase those. Well, I'm going to end up selecting all these lines. No? Right drag?
No,
That's what you just said.
that was a left drag. Right drag.
So right drag, similar to Revit, selects just kind of what's in the box. If you right drag, it'll start to select everything. And we can redraw that line since I erased it. You probably now utilize this, what is this, isolate object. Probably could have utilized that. That's new to me, but perimeter. So once you get all your walls to starting to look like this, and you can switch over to your model space and let's switch our scale to like a 1/16 of an inch equals a foot. So at a 1/16 inch scale, I'm going to type in paper space to get out of that. You can see what that's starting to look like on an 18 by 32 inch board. And so maybe all those little lines are a little bit too much at a 1/16 of an inch scale. So what do they look like at an 1/8 inch? And we can type MS to get into model space and use our middle mouse button, just push it down to utilize the pan. And PS, enter, get you back into paper space. And you can see it's quite bigger, and maybe that's appropriate to do that line work at this scale. Maybe not. It's not appropriate at 1/16 of an inch, so you just kind of gotta play with that a little bit. And then you also notice that our roof isn't in there anymore. It might be appropriate to rotate it and move it down in this area. So we can go ahead back into our model space and type RO. Well, let's move it first. M for move. Select this guy. And maybe take the orthographic mode off. Place him down here. Type RO for rotate. Maybe we want to rotate it about its center axis here and put our orthographic back on so that it snaps to a 90-degree angle. And then MO. M for move. Select it. Enter. And now I turn my ortho back off and see how that fits. Maybe right about there. And so now everything's back onto our 18 by 24 inch space, or 32 inch space. And sometimes it's good to just go ahead and set your files up on the 18 by 24, because a lot of people just go ahead and utilize the 18 by 32 and like cut out like 4 elements or something, and it's like tied up for a long time. The 18 by 24 laser printer.
18 by 32 is tied up.
What did I say?
24.
Okay. I don't think I said that. So the 18 by 32 laser printer is usually tied up a lot. So if you go ahead and place your stuff on 18 by 24 boards, sometimes you can jump ahead in the line to print on the 18 by 24. If the 18 by 32 is available, you can still print your 18 by 24 boards on the 18 by 32. So it's kind of a hint there about the processing in Jay's list of, you have to like jump in line, write your name down on the list, and if there's 10 people ahead of you and they're all cutting on the 18 by 32, you're not cutting for 2 or 3 hours. And so I always find setting up my boards on 18 by 24, I usually get in and out of there pretty quickly, typically. Because for some reason nobody thinks that that one exists or works, and so they always print on the 18 by 32. And generally, Jay, if there's nobody in there, we'll print on the 18 by 32 as well. So even if you have an 18 by 24, he'll just go ahead and use the 18 by 32. At any rate. Okay. We have 5 minutes left, and that's really what I wanted to get through today. If you could spend some time today in cleaning up the rest of these and apply them to the appropriate layer, that'd be awesome. Now here's the trick, right? So this is a template file. It's a DWT file. We don't want to save over our template file. We want to save it as a DWG file, which is a regular standard AutoCAD drafting file.
It is a DWG file.
Just, I don't want to get them confused with, I need to save this as a template file again. That's why I'm explaining that. Okay, so we opened up a template file, right? We don't want to save this over our template file. So when we go to save it, we want to make sure that we're not saving it as a DWT file, but we're saving it as a DWG. Okay? And so that's the file that you'll take in to J to have cut. So don't save over your template file. It's a template. Save it as a DWG file. So upload the DWT file and the DWG file tonight to Blackboard. Okay, upload them both. What else do I want to talk about today? Since we have 2 minutes, we're kind of winding down. Next week we're going to start the final project, which will be modeling this room in as much detail as possible. So the more detail you have, the better you'll be. Let's see if I can pull up my model of it really quickly here. But we're not going to provide you with a model to follow. So next week you'll probably want to bring in a measuring device to start measuring this space. You'll want to pretty much take a measure, what they call an area takeoff of the entire room, basically, so that you can start to make the model full scale as accurately as possible in Revit. So if you guys want to like team up to do that, you're more than welcome to, but everybody has to have their own individual file to turn in. So I would recommend bringing a measuring device with you to class next week. I'm going to introduce it, and maybe may just have a lab basically next week, and we'll at the beginning of each class maybe talk about a couple of things that we haven't hit on yet, like ceilings, how to create ceilings in Revit, and maybe dive into a little bit of families. But besides for that, you pretty much have the knowledge to model this room fairly accurately at this point. So the next 2 weeks will basically be, for the most part, open labs for people to come in and work on this project. We'll still be taking attendance, so make sure you show up and check in. If you don't have your computer to work on, get the measurements you need and go work on it somewhere else. You're going to need all of those 2 weeks in class and out of class time to work on it. So that's it for today. Thanks, guys. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit more to this video. To make this a little bit cleaner, you can start to, once you have these lines set the way you want, we can actually completely join the exterior perimeter lines together so that it cuts all in one line and doesn't start and stop. And depending on your thickness of material, if it starts and stops right here at this corner, it'll sometimes not cut the object all the way out depending on the thickness of the material. Typically with chipboard it works well, that you don't have to join, but anything thicker will leave a little connection point to the rest of the material. So we're going to go ahead and do a poly p-edit, which is creating a polyline basically. We want to use the multiple button, and we're just going to go around and select all of our exterior lines. And then hit enter. And yes, we want to create polylines, so Y, enter. And we want to join them together, so we can click the join button here with 0 tolerance. And now this whole exterior line is one line, and so the laser cutter will cut that clean completely out without having
any issues with breaks in the line. So when it sees a new line, it actually stops and starts again. And so if you join your exterior lines together, it'll be one continuous cut all the way around.